But people will give away their sick leave a whole lot more freely than their vacation leave, particularly if they aren't able to cash it out, the new employees, once they get a bigger balance.
Yeah.
The other thing with the financial is, say you have somebody, a police officer that's out on leave for 6 months. They aren't on paid leave. Is that frees up money in the police budget to hire or pay for overtime, where if people are given sick leave transfers, they're gonna be on pay, and then you don't have the resources to pay the overtime, or DPW to bring in a temp garbage collector. You know, you've kind of created additional costs there.
Can you say that again? So if somebody's that's
on leave, that would
Yeah.
previously be on unpaid leave,
Mm-hmm.
say they're out for 6 months, and then, now they're on paid leave because people have donated sick leave.
Right.
And so in the past, we may have used that savings within the budget to bring in temp help, or to pay a lot more overtime, because people are gonna have to work overtime because the person's missing. So there will be, I think, additional costs. The procedures that, I don't know when, the procedure doesn't describe how employees are informed that somebody wants donations. I mean, I guess Tyler described a verbal, how it is, but not in the policy, how the employees learn, because that's one thing is over years, people felt like people had to go out begging for leave. So, and you don't want like supervisors going to their other workers and saying, I need leave. So there has to be a controlled process, confidential, who learns, don't even tell the employee who donated, how that works.
So let me take a moment to summarize
Right.
our phone call earlier today is for Trustee Carpenter. So Trustee Maher asked about the procedures. So how that would work is if an employee wants to apply, we have a form in the HR manual that they would use to apply. That form would be handed to me for HR. And then I would send out a general email stating that so-and-so employee is qualified for the sick leave program or sick leave donation program. And that employees can fill out this form, it'd be a separate form if they're interested, and we would need it by a certain date, so supervisors are not doing, what he says, it's funneled through that one area. So that'd kind of be the general procedure, and then as we get the forms come in, I would work with our payroll to make sure that those hours would be requested or tracked.
The other thing it talks about, the employee must be utilizing and approved for Family Medical Leave Act leave. Like new employees aren't eligible for FMLA eligible leave until they've been here approximately a year, depending
12 months, yeah.
12 months, so the term approved FMLA leave, they are not approved, because we can't approve an FMLA because they aren't eligible for FMLA, because they're not here long enough.
That's correct.
So if we intend to provide it to new employees, which I think if we're gonna apply it, they're the ones that don't have any accrued leave worked up, is some language on it's approved sick leave with necessary medical documentation, or however I look through the sick leave, but something that, and also once they get past the 12 weeks FMLA period, they aren't really on FMLA leave anymore, they're on extended sick leave.
So, so we've talked about that. So if they ran out of their leave within the 12-week period, they would have the request for more leave, and that's when they would get those additional hours. And then those hours are for them to keep. So the issue would be if they ran out after the 12 weeks, and because, and how I interpret the policy right now, they would not qualify because it's outside of the 12-week period. So if we had an employee that was, let's say, out 6 months,
Right.
and they ended up running out 4 months, Well, that would be outside the 12-week period. So it'd be if they ran out of their FMLA leave within the 12-week period. Because it's no longer FMLA leave.
It needs to initiate during the 12 weeks of FMLA, or you can only use this leave during the 12 weeks of FMLA leave?
It would be if their bank expired during the 12-week period. That's how it's written right now.
So
Do you run FMLA concurrent with sick leave? Like as soon as someone goes out,
Yes,
it's starting the clock on the FMLA?
that's correct. Yeah. So if you would want that to read differently, that would be, we would need to change the language.
Yeah, I think you might want to clarify
Yeah.
that. And also it indicate, I mean, this is called a sick leave transfer policy, but it's really annual leave and or sick. It's both. You can transfer vacation to the
Yes.
employee.
It's any leave accruals. But it's called sick leave because when we transfer it to the employee needing it, it's transferred as sick leave to
Right.
them.
Right.
But for the employee donating, yeah, they can donate, as of right now, how it's written, they can donate vacation or, I think, vacation, I can't remember if comp's included or not, but we did specify if that's included. I just don't know on the top of my head. So this is the one that I knew I would get some, I really wanted some feedback, cause this is really a new policy. So, I would like to take this to the full board on the 16th, so if you have an idea, that if you want something written differently or have an adjustment to the policy, this would be really the time I would like that feedback, so I can either propose an alternative or adjust language prior to the 16th.
This is also available for not just the illness of the employee, but child rearing leave.
That's
like
correct.
family
And that was debated both here and the library board, but it was
Right.
decided, just keep it as any family medical leave, cause even if like you had, a family member that you had to care for, they felt it should be appropriate, for them, so at least when I talked to the library board, cause this is also a library board adopted policy earlier this year.
And child rearing is limited to, the policy 12 weeks? For like a new employee that has a.
Child
What happens if you get somebody who's in there like 6 months into their
12,
employee?
if it's consecutive weeks, it's 12 weeks. If you do it intermittent, it's
Right.
up to 6 weeks.
So if you have a new employee that's like, they arrive, they say they're pregnant, they're 9 months into their first year and
Okay.
they're on child, what do you do? Are they gonna be eligible for this child rearing
Well,
paid transfer?
Is it okay if I ask, what do you want the policy to read? Because as of right now, right, it says right now it's FMLA approved, right?
They aren't eligible.
They aren't eligible, so that's where I would ask for your feedback on how would you want that to read? That's the feedback that I need prior to the 16th, so.
Do you grant sick leave, or what do you grant? I'm just.
Well, it's only protected leave, so if, an employee in that position
Right.
came to us, we haven't had that yet, but that's where I would probably talk with Rebecca and say, we have an employee in this position, do we grant the leave or not? It's all circumstantial, but if we applied the leave, they would still be able to use their, sick
Mhm.
accruals and vacation accruals
Right.
for that time off.
Right.
It just isn't the protected FMLA leave, that's the one
Right,
difference.
it's not.
Yeah. So, and how the policy's written right now, I would say right now it's written as it would not qualify for the FMLA approved.
Yeah.
Because it's not FMLA, so they wouldn't qualify for the sick leave. But if
But
we
you
wanted
could
to read
give-
differently, we can adjust that to say, or anything that, that would qualify outside of the 12 months or something like that.
Is there a
But
child?
you say under procedures one, an employee must currently be utilizing and approved for FMLA leave in order to be eligible to request donated time. Let's say I'm in week 10 of my FMLA leave, and I request time, and you don't say that it ends at week 12.
Correct. It's only if your bank would expire within the 12 weeks.
My sick leave
any of your yes, it would be all your accruals
Okay, so
expired.
let's say I got, 4 more weeks donated to me, and I only have 2 more weeks of FMLA. So I've exhausted my FMLA. I could still take more
Still
sick.
get the 4 weeks.
I could still take more time. So it's really
Yes.
granting more than the FMLA time if the rest of the employees are willing to.
Correct, because typically, it's unless if it's outside of
Right.
the maternity or paternity leave, someone needs surgery or has some kind of medical treatment. A lot of times those go sometimes beyond the 12 weeks, and they have follow-up appointments. So that's where keeping those additional hours, could be helpful to some of those
So you
circumstances.
could go up to week 12 and then request it, and then get another month if somebody donated 160 hours.
If it's
You could-
expired,
You could,
correct.
you could use that, and you would.
Yes, correct. Good.
I mean, I don't think people are gonna donate that much time, frankly, but.
Yeah.
They do. They do. They do. Amazingly, they do. And some people don't take vacation, especially if it's sick leave. They never get sick, and you're sitting on a year's worth of sick leave or something. If you got long-term employees, but you got payouts.
Yeah.
But that'll shift over time. One thing that I've seen it occur is, and used most often, is somebody who gets cancer or there's something, and they're out. And they're good employees. They've been here a long time, and they run through their leave after 3 months. They're outside the FMLA period, but they still need 2 or 3 months worth of they're on unpaid. So I think we want to, if we're gonna have a policy, we want to protect those people too, that they have access to.
I will say for the new employees, my other response would be we do offer short-term and long-term
Right.
disability.
Yeah.
And that's where they should take a serious, especially if you look,
Right.
the maternity or paternity leave examples, they should really look at the short-term disability coverage. Even though the village doesn't pay a dime for that, that's all on the employee. It could be beneficial for them to be on that plan, especially within the first year of employment.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that, they wouldn't have that option. So that would be the other talking point that I'd mention to employees.
Does the village approve the sick leave sharing? So, like, do you have authority to say we're not gonna approve this? For example, if it's an employee who has exhausted FMLA and may not have cancer, may have some other issues, and you want them to come back, and
I can double check, but I believe it does say that it has to be approved by the village manager's office. Let me get that up.
Hmm.
I didn't think
I don't see that.
Let me look.
They submitted to the village.
Yeah,
the requesting form to the village manager, library
For
director,
approval.
designee.
what number is that under?
Number one,
And
an employee must submit a sick leave sharing request in writing to the village manager, assistant village manager, library director, or designee for approval.
Do you get very many people signing up for the LTD or the,
That was my
I mean, that's really,
About 10.
are
About 10.
they newer or older employees?
Older.
Yeah.
Yeah, recent new hires, it hasn't been as high.
Oh, that's an optional thing? You-
It's optional, yeah.
Same for short term?
And it's fully funded by the employee.
Correct.
Mm.
It's all based on their income, so I think it ranges from like $30 to $50 a month. I think is about the payment.
And would that be explained to them that they, without the short-term disability, they would not be eligible for any of this sick leave transfer?
Yeah, that would be something I would talk about during the employee orientation. Mhm.
Wait, you have to have the short-term disability?
You don't.
You
It's
don't,
just
but if you're a new employee,
Oh, right.
you're not eligible for this.
Well,
So
if you're a new
had,
employee, I don't know if people would donate their sick leave anyhow.
it's a real tragic situation.
Know you very well.
To my point, if somebody's cancer or if they,
Well, I just think we have to be protected
of.
on both sides. I mean, we have to look at the employee and
Right.
employees who might be in a tough situation, but we also have to look at someone who might be
Yeah.
taking advantage of the system and that we have
Mhm.
controls to not let that happen.
Yeah.
So for example, if the village manager says, no, I'm not gonna approve this, is that person, like if it's a police officer, are they gonna have a grievance? Well, why are you not approving me, but you've approved these other people? I don't know. I mean, this applies to union and non-union, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
I think having a conversation about the short-term disability for, first-year employees is really important. And making sure that that's a pretty uniform conversation for every new employee, that they're not, if there was some catastrophic situation in their life that they, for the first year are not eligible to participate in this if, God forbid they need it.
Could you
I will
s-
say with it, it's one of the reasons why we link this with FMLA leave, because with FMLA, in order to have that approved, we require medical certification. So, I mean, if the employee is saying they can't work because of a certain injury, they have to have a
Right.
doctor certify that, they can't perform,
Right.
the job functions, and that would also mean they wouldn't be able to do light duty, which we can offer in
Mhm.
other ways too, so those are other things just to keep in mind.
I thought you had said new employees would be, your interpretation of this is that new employees would be.
Would not be until, no, because they're not within the 12 months.
Oh, so you're saying okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
different than
if you
what I
wanted to read otherwise, that's the feedback that I need right now, because right now it's not written that way. It's just written as approved for FML, under the FMLA.
Mhm.
So if you would want an employee within their first 12 months to be